There are two aspects to understanding the current situation in Ukraine. Firstly, we will look at Ukraine as a nation, its location, economy, natural resources and wealth potential, and then give some background on the geopolitical relationship Ukraine has with Russia that has influenced the thinking of Ukraine's big neighbour over the centuries.
Firstly, let us take a look at Ukraine as a nation. Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe after Russia, which it borders to the east and northeast, spanning an area of over 603,000 square kilometres. It also shares borders with Belarus to the north, Poland, Slovakia and Hungary to the west, and Romania and Moldova to the south. It has nearly 3,000 kilometres of coastline, giving access to the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea in the south. With a population of 43 million, Ukraine is the 8th most populous country in Europe. Just under 3 million of those people live in the capital and largest city of Kiev. Ukraine is generally regarded as a developing country. Its gross domestic product per capita, or that is per head, in 2020 was just over $3,000, which is equivalent to roughly 25% of the world's average. By comparison, GDP per capita in the UK was just over $40,000. So Ukraine is among the poorest countries in Europe. This is often blamed on the high level of corruption that exists in the country. Ukraine also suffers from a relatively low life expectancy. So what of Ukraine's natural resources? The people of Ukraine are rightly proud of their land, which is richly endowed with abundant natural resources, and its potential for wealth creation is significant. 2/3 of the country boasts some of the most fertile soils in the world, and together with a favourable climate and a rich water supply, Ukraine's crop production has become highly developed. It has often been referred to as the breadbasket of Europe, as its output of grain is among the highest in Europe. It's among the world's largest producers of sugar beet and sunflower oil, and also produces a wide range of other crops. Its livestock sector is also considerably larger than those of most other European countries. Indeed, Ukraine has the ability to provide enough food for 500 million people, maybe more. The current war with Russia, which has prevented the planting of crops, has the potential to cause severe shortages and price increases of a number of agricultural products in the world food chain. We are already seeing this in the shortage of sunflower oil, for example. In addition to valuable fertile soils, Ukraine is a unique geological region with some of the richest profusion of mineral resources in the world. The Ukrainian Shield is an ancient geological structure with considerable deposits of metals such as iron and manganese ore and rare earths such as titanium. So far as energy is concerned, Ukraine is heavily dependent on fossil fuels and nuclear power. There are abundant reserves of coal, but 90% of it is in the disputed Donbas region, and the government refuses to buy from there, so it is now a net importer of coal. Ukraine also relies on imported oil and natural gas, its own supplies having been severely depleted during the Soviet era. And having lost jurisdiction over the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, the country has now lost a further 80% of its oil and natural gas deposits in the Black Sea. A major economic asset crossing Ukraine are the pipelines, which connect the Siberian oil and gas fields with Europe. These carry over 1/3 of Russian exports to other European countries. Their importance to Russia has at least given Ukraine leverage in negotiations over oil and gas imports. Ukraine has a wide-ranging and valuable manufacturing sector including ferrous metals and heavy machinery. And so far as trade is concerned, Russia remains Ukraine's most important trading partner, but it also conducts a significant and increasing volume of trade with the EU, mainly Germany, Italy and Poland, but also with China, Turkey and the United States. Although Ukraine is blessed with a rich endowment of natural resources, it does in fact now face some considerable environmental issues. During the former Soviet period, rapid industrialization, intensive farming, and a lack of effective pollution controls combined to seriously degrade the environment. And now some of the most polluted areas in the world are to be found here. Major rivers, including the Dnieper and Donets, are seriously polluted with chemical fertilizers and pesticides from agricultural runoff, and with poorly treated or untreated sewage. Coastal water pollution in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea has led to the closure of beaches and a dramatic reduction in fish catches. So, despite the abundance of natural resources, the conditions governing wealth creation in Ukraine can be seen to be extremely challenging. But clearly, control of these natural resources would greatly benefit Russia. Was it ever thus? We will now look at Ukraine in its wider geopolitical and historical context.
Geopolitics. Russia, as a great power, has always been held back by two geographic factors. It has no ice-free ports of its own through which it can project its economic and military power and influence. Also, it is vulnerable to attack from the west because of the vast open North European plain. So in the north through Poland and in the south through Romania and Moldova, there are clear flat grasslands over which armies can advance on Russia with little or no natural barriers along the way. It is the southern route which critically affects Ukraine at the moment, and why Russia is seeking to control one way or another this route, which leads through the historic region of Bessarabia into the area which has been known as Novorossiya or New Russia. Here we have Odessa, the Crimea, the whole Black Sea coast of Ukraine and the Donbass region. We can see in the news that Russia is trying to secure a land corridor along this coast. Novorossiya was always part of the Russian Empire, which falls within modern-day Ukraine. Its name indicates Russia's attitude to this region. As recently as 2014, Vladimir Putin stated that the territories of Kharkiv, Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Mykolaiv and Odessa were part of what was called Novorossiya. This was a failed political project to establish a confederation of Novorossiya, which would have extended Russian control throughout southern Ukraine. Currently, we can see that Russia is now focusing its aggression in this area. Crimea is also important because it has the port of Sevastopol. This is a warm water, ice-free port, which is of great value to Russia. It also has a large Russian naval base, which it has been leasing from the Ukrainian government. Crimea is an area which is largely Russian-speaking, so taken all together, when Ukraine forced its pro-Russian president to step down and flee to Russia in the 2014 Orange Revolution, and then elected a pro-Western government, Russia felt that it had to annex the peninsula to protect its interests and people. Stalin's policy of exiling troublesome minority Russians to various parts of the Soviet Empire has now worked in Russia's favour, as these peoples are frequently used to justify Russia's interference as defending fellow Russians who are being persecuted. In fact, Crimea was part of Russia for 2 centuries before being transferred to the Soviet Republic of Ukraine, then part of the Soviet Union, in 1954 by President Khrushchev, who had no notion at the time that the USSR would come to an end. Russia has always thought of Ukraine as a part of Russia itself, which is why they often speak of liberating the people of Ukraine from persecution. As previously mentioned, Russia is fearful of invasion from the West, So its foreign policy has always been to control the countries to its west, either by invasion or by political interference or influence. In the 18th century, Russia under Peter the Great and then Empress Catherine the Great looked westward to expand the Russian Empire to become one of the great powers of Europe. A more secure and powerful Russia was then able to occupy Ukraine and reach the Carpathian Mountains, thus securing its buffer zone. In fact, Russia sees the following countries as a natural buffer zone and its natural sphere of influence: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus and Ukraine. It currently already has Belarus in its pocket. It is now trying to take Ukraine. Will the Baltic republics be next? In fact, all these countries were part of the Russian Empire and Soviet Union until 1989, when that country collapsed. The fact that the Baltic republics are now all part of NATO may make Russia pause before potentially starting a much bigger conflict. We can only hope so. Most people will look at what Russia has done to Ukraine as an unwanted return to a past that has long gone, and that no one in the modern world is intent on invading Russia. Russia is very aware of its history, and they don't see it like this. Take the last 500 years. There have been a number of invasions and wars. For example, the Poles attacked across the North European plain in 1605, the Swedes under Charles XII in 1708, the French under Napoleon in 1812, the Crimean War of 1853–6, World War I battles and World War II battles with the Germans. Over this period, on average, the Russians have been fighting in and around the North European plain once every 30 to 50 years at least. So this attitude is ingrained in their thinking.
And so, to conclude, by taking a broad historical view alongside a brief look at Ukraine's economy, we hope this presentation has helped give a better understanding of the events we see unfolding daily.
As someone recently wrote, Europe's holiday from history has come to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.